Hello, and welcome to this very special episode of Anime Audio Commentary. This episode marks 4 full years that I've been doing this podcast. I've enjoyed it, I hope you've enjoyed it, and in light of the occasion, I've decided to do something special to commemorate it. Without further ado, I will be commenting on the film Konosuba Legend of Crimson. If you'd like to watch along, then start watching now. So, I realized when I was watching Konosuba Season 3 that I'd made a little bit of a mistake in that this movie is ahead in the continuity and it, sort of happens between episodes, or rather seasons 2 and 3. And, I watched Season 3 without much trouble, but I feel like, if nothing else, it's a good thing to just go back and watch it and, what better an opportunity than right now? So, given that I don't really know what happened and there was only like a little allusion to it, I get the feeling that the story is pretty self-contained. Or at the very least, events from this don't really carry out into the wider plot. Although it seems like Megumin's getting up to her old tricks again. Oh dear. It seems to me, if your quest is to catch more tuna and you are using explosion magic, you are, probably going about things the wrong way, So I guess, it's all over then. Megumin ruined everything. She does have a tendency to ruin things, but not normally to this extent, right? Man. Oh, darkness. You can't help yourself, can you? She just has to immediately jump in and defend Megumin as if that'll, make the situation any better. Yeah, so this really does seem to be the classic status quo of Konosuba. Everyone's making everything more difficult and Kazma's sort of forced to wrangle everyone, the poor guy. Although it seems like, he's not safe from ridicule either. I don't think he did anything particular to deserve this, aside from the usual, but oh dear. So, the arrival of Union never portends anything good. Oh dear. Alright, I guess we're back. This is Kazuma hitting his stride, I suppose. I mean, surely there will be no dire consequences for reproducing with Union, and, surely she has a good reason, of course. There's no way anything could go badly. Ah, man, and he just wants to hear her say it, like... I feel like Kazuma, being, sort of shrewd, I feel like he should just, hop to it, No need to, just beat around the bush and talk about things, now is the time for action. Now, it is typical that Megumin and Darkness would try and talk Union out of it, saying, look, this is Kazuma, right? But I guess, there's a little bit more at play here. This child would grow up to slay the Demon King and save the world and all that, allegedly. I mean, the idea is, hopefully Kazuma would take care of the Demon King, but, if you can have a kid and the kid will do it, why not, right? Wow. Megumin's hitting below the belt here. First demoting Union to an acquaintance, and then saying, Kazma's just a shady person that an acquaintance shouldn't interact with. I mean, that is kind of a fair statement, but at the same time, I think Kazma's right here, this sort of intervention is really only motivated by self-interest rather than any genuine care for Union. It's more so they don't want Kazuma to have anything good in life, you know? It's crabs in a bucket, they're just trying to pull him down. Alright, so I guess this is the impetus behind everything. You know, so not only has Yunyun's father passed away, but, okay, so I guess, it's prophecy then. You know, the village would be destroyed, the village being Yunyun and Megumin's home. However, you know, it seems like a future progeny would be the key to solving everything. Very unfortunate that Megumin's death is not recorded in this prophecy. You know, it just says she won't survive. Oh. Yeah, this prophecy's kind of hitting below the belt a little bit. You know, it doesn't call out Kazuma by name, but it just says, like, an unremarkable man with no real skills or aptitude. Jeez. Kazuma's not even safe in prophecy. So I guess, yeah, like, Kazuma's child is prophesied to slay the Demon King, and that's good and all that, but, you know, unfortunately the timeline doesn't work for Aqua, you know. Imagine having to wait, I don't know, like a decade plus for this to work out. So I guess the sticking point here is that the fortune tellers of the village are highly skilled, and therefore this prophecy should not be doubted lightly. Oh. It's all fan fiction. Oh dear. That's deeply unfortunate for Yunyun, just to say like, hey, let's make a kid and all that, and it was all, you know, a work of fiction. Man, you know, it probably is a good thing Kazuma didn't jump right to it then. Although I guess, you know, the other one is, genuine about the village being attacked, so that... Oh, dear. Yeah, sorry Kazuma, I guess you have to put your pants back on, and, you know, maybe you guys had better see to the village and all that, seeing as how it is seemingly under attack. I mean, it seems as though the village does have some strategic value if the Demon King wants to take him out. So I guess, wow. That's awfully, I don't want to say shrewd, but maybe callous that, you know, hey, like if Megumin and Yunyun live, then like, their bloodlines won't die out. It doesn't matter if the village is destroyed. Yeah, well, so Yunyun's just heading back to the village to take care of things, but... I mean, surely I feel like Megumin would have some interest in saving her former home, right? And I feel like as good-hearted adventurers, you know, to a degree, they might be interested in saving a village of innocent people. And I guess, you know, Megumin is sort of married to the idea that, like, you know, maybe she isn't willing to have this village she used to live in butchered by demons. So it's interesting that they sent Yunyun off to, like, walk back to the village, whereas they have seen fit to hit up Wiz, you know, the local lich, to see if she can teleport them. You know, maybe Wiz can help them out, but like, you know, maybe you shouldn't have turned Yunyun away before doing this. I mean, I reckon that they want to spend as little time with her as possible, as is, you know, seemingly the case for everyone, but, you know, it wouldn't hurt to do her a little courtesy, would it? So I guess this is sort of, the introduction to Kazuma making all that money by working with this devil here. You know, that did become a plot point later in Season 3 where Kazuma essentially sold, well, everything. All his intellectual property, all his stake in everything to get a rather vast sum of money to buy darkness. Oh dear. So you know when Wiz is wishing you like a good fun journey and all that, you know things are gonna go poorly. Not because Wiz is malicious in any way, but because that's just how things go. Ooh. You know, it's never a good thing when you teleport someone and you consider that, like, wait a minute, the Crimson Demon Village isn't that nearby, ... Yeah, it seems as though they've been teleported right into danger. It's also never a good thing when your big emergency quest is subtitled Survive. Oh dear. Kazuma's really got his work cut out for him. You know, fortunately, Megumin, Aqua, and Darkness can probably survive this, but, oh dear indeed. I feel like, yeah, this is no good for Kazuma. You know, I was thinking, like, maybe after being disappointed with the whole thing with Yunyun, he might, you know, look on the bright side. But, yeah, I don't know, there's not much of a bright side here. The real question is, will at least Megumin just, like, decide to blow them all up or something? Oh, dear. You know, in her own special way, Darkness is suffering, because, like, you know, orcs have a bit of a reputation, and with no male orcs left alive, like, who's the real victim here? I think it's quite obvious it's Darkness, the poor girl. You know, you would think she would channel this into, like, the female orcs to some degree, right? Like, you know, this is your fault. So the question is, like, what happens now? I feel like the best thing that could be done is Megumin just blows them all up. I mean, at the very least, Kazuma can be resurrected, right? Man, I can't help but wonder if this is something like karmic punishment for Kazuma. Unfortunately, I feel like none of his stalling tactics are gonna work here, you know? You know, it would be a nice change of pace if, instead of Megumin doing something, if Aqua's like party trick somehow saved the day. I mean, I guess this is ending up not being the case, as Yunyun has intervened, but it would have been nice, right? So the real question is, how's Kazuma going to show his gratitude, you know? I feel like maybe he should, at least sort of thank her for having avoided this ravaging. Jeez, how typical of Kazuma. Oh dear. So I guess that's it then, you know, poor Kazuma's traumatized, and now, I guess the party's just gonna have to deal with that. Oh no, surely they're not setting up Darkness as being jealous of Kazuma, right? Because that's exactly the sort of situation she would like to be in. Oh dear. Man, Yunyun can't take praise at all, because, like, I think Kazuma's being jealous when he says he looks up to her now. I mean, he would probably be the first. Not many people really seem to admire or even really tolerate Yunyun. But, oh dear, Megumin. She's just causing problems now. You know, I feel like she's telling a bit of a lie here. Ooh. Okay, so maybe Megumin wasn't lying. She's just actually telling embarrassing secrets. Okay, so I guess that this whole film is going to have Megumin sort of tagging around the group. And, maybe not for the best, because it seems like her outburst is attracting monsters. And while these aren't orcs, these are, I guess, affiliated with the Demon King. So, it really does seem like that first letter is true. The village is under threat of the Demon King and his armies, and, if people don't intervene, things are going to get bad real quickly. Oh dear. Still fixated on the tattoo, of course. I wonder if we'll ever learn where the tattoo is, Just because it's been brought up twice now, I am kind of interested, but I feel like, it's probably not something that can be stated decently. It's probably not good for Aqua to be teasing these demons. Because I feel like they might prove to be a bit more difficult than she assumes they will be. Oh dear. I guess it's not that they might be not that impressive, it's just that there's, a lot more of them. Oh dear. It's never a good thing when you sort of talk down on Megumin's explosion magic. And it's definitely not a good thing when she's going to use it in so confined an area as this. I can't help but feeling like everyone's going to get caught up in the blast, and she's also going to level the forest too. Seeing as how she's effectively an ecological disaster waiting to happen, she should probably be kept on a shorter leash, Yeah, it seems kind of short-sighted on Megumin's part that, you blew everyone up and now everyone needs to be carried, not just Megumin. So unfortunately, they now have to contend with this army. Although, if I had to guess, the army doesn't seem to be charging, but rather fleeing something. Well, I guess maybe that's not the case. Yeah. I can really understand why Megumin is the way she is now. It seems the whole village is exactly like her. So I can't help but wonder, why was Megumin ever away from the village? Surely they would have had to send her away because she just causes trouble, right? I mean, at the very least, they recognize her on sight, which is probably good, but, interesting. No one seems to know anything about the danger to the village. Yeah, alright. So, I feel like that little nod there that's like, yes, you can give these big impressive introductions. The guy said he's a cobbler. That means he makes shoes. Oh. So Cosmo was even able to return a proper greeting, which is to say, you have to be kind of silly. Wow. Teleportation magic seems pretty ubiquitous, for a cobbler to be able to cast the spell. Wow. So, the Crimson Demon Village is, rather nice and idyllic. I would not have assumed that based on everything I've gleaned from Megumin. I guess it would make some degree of sense that she had been exiled for being a menace. Okay, so this was all an elaborate prank, it seems like. So I'm wondering what the actual plot is now. It seems like there was no trouble at all. Union's father is not at risk of dying. Okay. So, there is something of an issue. There is one of the Demon King's generals nearby, and one who's skilled with magic, but, surely that shouldn't be a big problem to the village, right? If they're all magic users. Yeah, so I guess things aren't going well for the Demon King's armies. In retrospect, with how heavily they're being beaten back, one wonders why the Crimson Demon Village could ever have been at risk unless there was, truly a massive army being mustered. I can't help but wonder if the problem is just the Crimson Demons themselves are just, all sort of menaces. Oh, okay. So this all sort of makes sense. This building Aqua mistook for a stable is actually Megumin's house, and it's sort of, a good ways away from the rest of the village and considerably worse in quality. Which, this makes a certain amount of sense. I feel like no one would want Megumin anywhere near the nice village. And I guess Megumin also has siblings, too. So, Komeko seems normal enough, but, oh dear. So to claim that your older sister is back and has snared a man, that's an evocative statement right there, as if it's a wholly unbelievable thing that Megumin could have finally found someone. And I guess worst of all, Cosmo's just gonna have to deal with this. Megumin's sleeping off her explosion, Cosmo's got to contend with the parents, and, it's not like Aqua and Darkness aren't also there, but they're not the ones in the hot seat. Although at the very least, Aqua might have an actual audience for her party tricks. So, unfortunately, Cosmo's decided to say oh, we're just friends, and that's the wrong answer, I get the distinct impression he wanted to say betrothed or something, but the truth of the matter is, Cosmo's sort of the wrangler, he keeps everyone in more or less a reasonable state of being. Wow, that's a statement. You keep shamelessly insisting that you're only friends. Oh dear indeed. So I feel like I know where Megumin gets her personality from, Alright, so I guess as the conversation goes on, it seems as though, life is kinda difficult at Megumin's household, not much in the way of food or anything. And I guess Kazuma, by sharing food, has ingratiated himself. Good on him, I suppose. Jeez. Even when he's being so nice to this family, they can't help but, insinuate that he might have untoward motives, which, that just isn't true. Oh. Man, Megumin's parents are assuming a lot that, maybe you should pay our debts before you take in our daughter. It's whoa there, wait a minute. Oh, okay, so, man. Megumin really editorialized on her letters back to her parents, and, Man, there is some truth to what Megumin said, but her accounts of everything are, kind of skewed, I feel like. Wow. It's like, look, you are filthy-mouthed, debt-ridden, and generally incompetent, but without Megumin you would die, so we'll let you keep her for now. That's something, Okay, so Kazuma has made a mistake here by mentioning that he's on the verge of making money, but not just a little money, a lot of money. So I feel like, just like flipping a light switch, suddenly they like him now. Weird, that. And, despite the debt, he does actually have a mansion back in Axel. Surely Megumin's parents would like to move in and all that, if there's an extra room, of course. Man. At least they're sort of treating him reasonably well now, Although, unfortunately, I feel like they might be staying here longer than intended, just because that seems to be the more entertaining thing to have happen. Ooh. Okay. Unfortunately, Megumin's mother is saying Kazuma's an adult with good judgment. That's not really the case. And for Megumin's mom to just sort of put everyone to sleep here, she's up to something. The idea is probably like marrying off Megumin, but yeah, there's something going on here, and Megumin's mom, there's something awfully shrewd about her. Although I guess to have assigned him a room with Megumin, like he's probably not going to be able to contain himself too much, and this is probably what Megumin's mom was hoping for. Oh man. So yeah, like that's probably to be expected that she would also lock the door, and I guess, they really want some of that money from Kazuma as soon as he makes it. It's now sort of sinking into Kazuma that this is basically an ideal setup, right? So, when in Rome, do as the Romans do, right? But, there's still that little pragmatic sense of his where it's like, okay, this will lead to trouble eventually. I guess the question is, how can he get out of this with plausible deniability, right? Because, it is kind of cold, there's one futon, there's one blanket, but, I don't know, surely he couldn't, dump Megumin out of the floor and just take it all for himself, right? I feel like that's the Kazuma thing to do. I feel like, given the construction of the house, maybe he could just sort of, kick the door down. Probably not the best way to ingratiate himself with his hosts here, but it's probably better than getting caught up in whatever plot this is. And, he's acting like crawling into the futon is, falling for their devious trap, which, in a sense it is, but I don't know. I feel like at some point you're just gonna have to do something, He really is overthinking this. Unfortunately, I feel like the best thing you can probably do is just kind of stop caring what other people say and think. Because, if he is on the verge of having all sorts of money, which, I suppose I know he is, then, really, you can just sort of afford to not care what other people think. So, Kazuma's thinking that, like, this is set up by Megumin's mother, therefore everything's okay, right? But I feel like that's kind of the wrong approach to take, because there are ulterior motives at work here. And I guess now that Megumin's woke up, naturally, I suppose I assumed something would happen, but she's kind of taking it in her stride. She's just sort of casually asking, okay, why are we sharing a futon, with no real answer, and, man. This is a rather tame reaction, I'd imagine, that she just sort of wonders why she's in her old room having woken up next to Kazuma in the same futon, which, you know, you'd have to wonder why that's the case, but at the same time, this is kind of a tame reaction, all things considered. Oh. So Kazuma lets slip that Megumin's mom is behind this, and I feel like, maybe he shouldn't have done that, and perhaps being so eager to have Megumin rejoin him is suspicious. Unfortunately, I think Kazuma, he was reading too far into things, and he sort of let the mask drop a little too early, you know? Oh dear. Chance blown. And I guess unfortunately, although Megumin's mom planned ahead, she didn't lock the window, so I guess that's it then. So, Aqua's assuming that there are sites around the Crimson Demon Village, although I feel like this isn't necessarily the case where Megumin lives. You know, the whole place just seems to be generally kind of run down. Ooh. Red flag. Darkness wants to go visit a place. That's never a good thing, but seeing as how everyone's sort of subtly mutating Kazuma's name, you know, they know about what happened, and, you know, I guess it's fair that they're not really giving him the benefit of the doubt, knowing that they know him as well as they do, but at the same time, like, he was clearly set up. You know, I feel like that should count for something. Not that his own actions really absolve him either. Wait a minute. They hold like a little Catgirl figure as sacred? Can't say I blame him, really. Although I do find it interesting that they're all visiting the sites while Darkness is seemingly doing something. Probably something that'll move the plot along, right? Okay, so they've come up to a mysterious facility where the Crimson Demon's natural enemy is sealed away. I'm wondering if it's like refined petroleum or something, because the whole place seems to have a sort of factory, refinery sort of air to it. You know, I'm wondering if Kazuma has any idea what this place might be, or, you know, maybe they're just not going to expand upon it. So this guy is being kinda hard on Kazuma and Aqua for being outsiders, but I'm wondering if this is like the setup for a joke where he finds Aqua's taste in clothing superlative. I mean, I guess not, you know, he just wanted to do his thing, but I wouldn't be surprised if Aqua's holy raiment, or whatever it was called, impresses him. Okay, so I guess Megumin just wants like an exact duplicate of what she already owns. Okay. So I guess, you know, it makes sense if she's got some money since, you know, she happens to blow things up frequently herself. She might as well, you know, buy some new robes and all that. why not, But at the same time, she's spending money before Kazuma has made the money he claims he will be making. It's never a good thing to count your chickens before they hatch, figuratively speaking. It's also not a good thing to spend money before you've earned it, Uh-oh. So it's never a good thing when Kazuma recognizes something, but the something in question appears to be a firearm. That Aqua and Kazuma recognize it is nothing new, but for the residents of the Crimson Demon Village to not really understand what it is, that's kind of interesting. Makes me wonder if that place they came to before, the natural enemy of the Crimson Demon clan, was like a firearms manufacturer. So now, I guess they're being invited to the school, presumably where everyone studies magic. And I guess, they have to pity Union for a little bit. So, I do find it interesting that Megumin dug up her old uniform to wear. Especially interesting considering she was giving Union a little bit of crap for it, like, look, you clearly wanted to spend time with us. Why is Aqua hitting him below the belt that, like, ooh, Kazuma just hates school because he was a freak? True enough, but, like, you don't gotta say that. So I guess we're now meeting the culprit behind that little fanfiction that caused Union so much distress. And I guess a couple other freaks, too. So I guess that last one, she's the foremost at being forgetful. Wow. So I'm wondering, are these any relation to Megumin? Because, I wouldn't be surprised if they were. Alright, so they're, purely classmates, but, oh dear. It's over when you have to tell the author to stop sending her writings as letters, lest people believe what you write. Man, I feel like Union should, probably do something about that, exact some form of retribution. Oh my god. This is sad beyond belief that Union would have to lie to everyone that, like, oh no, this is my party, and we let Megumin join out of pity. At least everyone sees through Union's obvious lies, That's kinda nice. But at the same time, I feel like she should learn that, maybe you don't gotta lie if everyone knows you're already pathetic. At least everyone's impressed by her magical ability to some degree. Now that was an interesting look Kazuma was giving her. Not quite pity, but I'm wondering if that'll be significant. Although I guess it's probably that, he was witnessing people who had friends at school, even Union to a degree. Although I guess some of it is the realization that Megumin is truly an outlier. So it seems as though Megumin, just put in a lot of work and stuff in school in order to learn explosion magic. I'm wondering if she, deliberately tanked her classes and failed in order to learn explosion magic and save up and all that. Okay. So this is interesting. Was Union sort of like Megumin in that she wanted to learn explosion magic, but then ultimately folded to help Megumin's sister? I mean, Megumin very nearly folded herself, but... Wow. So, unfortunately, Aqua has learned the wrong thing from that story. But, there is something to be said for Union, and maybe other people should treat her just a little bit better. Okay, so if the demons, Lady Sylvia and her army are upset, obviously it's darkness that's causing the problem here. I guess she's sought them out and confronted them in hopes that they would, do something, Oh dear. Now this is a tragedy. There are no male orcs left. Even the general of the Demon King's army is a woman. I guess Darkness is just gonna have to suffer this entire movie, and not in the way she wants. Okay, so she's playing along, hoping that, maybe something nice will happen, but, man, it's unfortunate that she has to rely on Cosma to sort of fill in a little bit and say like, oh yeah, no, Darkness is actually dangerous. You should beat her mercilessly. And I guess, Megumin's getting on it a little bit too, as is Cosma. It's like, yeah, we beat a whole bunch of the generals and also the Mobile Fortress Destroyer. Yeah, we did that, so we're dangerous. I mean, Verdia, Hans, Varnir, the way Sylvia's talking, it's like, oh yeah, we lost contact with these people, so it all checks out. So only now is Cosma getting cold feet, oh, you want to know my name? It's understandable that you wouldn't want to give your name to a bunch of demons, but to give Mitsurugi's name, frankly, that guy does kind of deserve it too. Unfortunately, it seems like Mitsurugi is somewhat known, and I feel like this isn't going to work to Cosma's benefit in the long run. It would be interesting to see Mitsurugi again, because that guy was suffering pretty hard at the hands of Kazuma. It is also interesting that the demons were just seen off so quickly that they would just, leave. It's not very, sporting of them, I suppose. And I guess, unfortunately, now that they have to stay at Megumin's family's residence again, I'm wondering if the same thing is sort of repeating itself. It's, jeez, Kazuma. It's never a good thing when you're lying in your bed and, your breath is steaming up. That's pretty cold. But, yeah, unfortunately, it has given Kazuma plausible deniability. It's like, no, I'm not doing anything untoward. It's just cold in here. Which, fair enough, but... I'm wondering if the door is even locked. I wouldn't be surprised if Kazuma's just doing all this anyways. Now something tells me that Megumin's idea of thanking Kazuma is probably, not exactly what he's hoping. Although I guess she is sincerely thanking him. Which, that's a nice change of pace. I suppose I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop here, but I can't help but notice she said thank you for taking in an aimless wizard that only uses explosion magic. As if that's not still the case right now. Alright, so I guess everyone's just going to be sincere, which is nice for a change of pace. Megumin thanks Cosma sincerely, Cosma gives a Crimson Demon-style introduction. And, One that's rather honest, too. Axel's weakest adventure, he who hopes to make a lot of money one day. Oh. Oh dear indeed. I guess Megumin's mother has learned a little bit that, yeah, it's time to bar the windows, too. Oh, dear. Cosma froze the windows shut. That's considerably worse, I feel like Megumin's mom's not really gonna care exactly, but, man, I feel like maybe causing a little bit of property damage is not the way to ingratiate yourself to your prospective in-laws. Man, Cosmo's playing dirty, and I feel like things are gonna backfire somehow. Ooh. Maybe now's not the time to call the guy a wimp. That seems like tempting fate. Unfortunately... Oh dear, I thought Cosmo was gonna, read the mixed message wrong, but no, it seems like the Demon King's army is attacking now. Well, maybe not attacking per se, but they've been detected. And I guess, there really is no better way to get Cosmo all up and at him than something like this. I mean, it really is something for him to run outside to fight the Demon King's general like this. It's interesting that he's taking charge so handily. It's like, look, things are just getting good. You have interrupted everything. I will... Oh, jeez. I will dropkick any woman who deserves it. Oh, boy. So, unfortunately, Cosmo's lies have now backfired. He does not have the cursed sword. He instead has the unfortunate Chun Chun Maru, which is cursed for an entirely different and far less usable reason. It's interesting that he's just admitting to all his lies now. I feel like maybe you should be doing that after you've handled the Demon Lord's general. Although, maybe Cosmo is just willing to go along with things as they are. At least he sort of recognizes that some of this is probably not good, but, there's something to be said for taking things as they come, Like, Cosmo's just kind of looking on the bright side. Cosmo does have a point here in that, I am noticing a bit of a pattern in all of his encounters here, and that he's probably not wrong to expect some sort of a karmic backlash. But at the same time, look, you have to take what you can get, Oh dear. So this is a little twist. Sylvia here is not a pure demon. And... Oh, interesting. So she's experimented on herself and all sorts of stuff. The growth chimera, as she puts it. Which, that's interesting. So she's just gonna, grow and adapt to her body and all that? I mean, Cosma... Jeez. I can't say I totally blame him, but, man. That's a very evocative way of putting it. It's as if I finally found the sanctuary I've been looking for my entire life. Oh, man. At this point, I really do think Megumin should just blow everyone to perdition. Kazuma saying, like, look, Sylvia actually appreciates me. I might defect to the Demon King's army, so, you guys had better apologize for all the things I do for you. And, now they're taking it like it's a joke, which, like, it might as well be, even though it very clearly isn't. You know what? Good on Kazuma for not backing down. Like, can you blame the man for wanting genuine contrition out of his party members? Oh boy. So I guess it's just turning into a verbal lashing now. He's starting with darkness. It's like, look, your only strength is your body. You are worthless in every other capacity. The question is, how is he going to dress down Megumin and Aqua? Like, I think I kinda know, but I do find it interesting that Kazuma's sort of hijacked everything here. To the point where Sylvia's like, look, you don't have to be this harsh on him. Very interesting that Sylvia has become the voice of reason as the Demon Lord's general. So unfortunately, for a demon that can understand both men and women, Kazuma, I think, has failed to read between the lines here, and, understanding that she's a chimera, Kazuma sort of now realizes the folly of everything. Deeply unfortunate for him. Oh dear indeed. Yeah, Kazuma's really gotten himself into trouble here. Man. This is kinda what he deserves for threatening to defect, but this whole film really has just been bullying Kazuma. Rather relentlessly too. Now, I guess the question is, how's he gonna get out of this, Because he seems to have been taken back to that factory. So I guess that factory truly was, like, the hideout of the Demon Lord's general and all that. Oh, no, they've got, like, a hidden magic weapon. I'm wondering if that's some sort of, like, artillery or something. I mean, it's claimed to be a mage killer that can neutralize any magic, but I can't help but wonder if it's really just a gun. I would not be surprised if that were the twist. So Sylvia here seems to be relying on magic to do things. But, okay, so Kazuma just sort of, like, inherently understands what the password might be, and I feel like he really is just gonna fold quickly. Oh, Kazuma. Utterly incorrigible. But yeah, given that this place is riddled with technology, I feel like the mage killer really is just gonna be like a gun, Something with like a big caliber to just really stick it to those stupid mages. Man. Oh, Kazuma's gonna hit like a light switch and turn on the lights, isn't he? What a jerk. Although at the same time... Oh man, I wasn't sure he was gonna do that immediately, just shove her down the stairs, but good on him, I guess. Locking her in this vault. You know what? Despite all the odds, like, he did it, he trapped her, and I guess that's that for the time being. Oh no. Kazuma's hearing her pleas, and I get a bad feeling that he's probably gonna fold again. Yeah. Unfortunately, Aqua's saying things that like, oh, Cosmo, like, you defeated her by yourself. Aren't you so great? And, what if she activates the weapon? Like, she's not going to do that. I'd run a lap around the village. I get the feeling that perhaps Sylvia has activated the weapon. Or if nothing else, she's started some sort of internal process. Like, I do get the feeling that this place was a factory at some point, and, maybe that was like a generator, like, exploding and cooking off or something. So, despite Cosmo's good intentions and, seemingly a good idea, it seems as though Sylvia has integrated the mage killer into her form, and therefore, things are not good. I feel like their best bet is still probably Aqua using, her sacred magic. Like, even if it isn't wholly effective, she could at least do something. So, Sylvia's just sort of taking on the form of like a giant snake, essentially, but this doesn't really answer what the mage killer is. I mean, nothing she's really doing is indicative of like a mage killing weapon. She really just seems to be destroying buildings and stuff. I mean, this doesn't seem to be particularly anti-mage weaponry for it to just, breathe fire. It's interesting that the army of demons sort of, like, recognize the mage killer on sight, like, okay, yeah, that must be it. I don't know why they would make that assumption. It probably is a good thing that Cosmo is keeping everything to himself for the time being, that like, oh yeah, we let that thing out, So everyone seems to know about the mage killer and this secret countermeasure, and these runes that no one could decipher and all that. I guess it makes sense that all these Crimson Demons would just sort of hoard all this knowledge secretly for themselves. Okay, so things are actually getting rather interesting. Darkness is taking it upon herself to protect Megumin's little sister, while Megumin and Cosmo and the others go to decode the secret runes. So, I guess it's to everyone's benefit that everyone's sort of rallying to defend the village as if this is the sort of thing they were looking forward to. But, yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's gonna be another little wrinkle between now and the end. So now that Wiz and Varnier are seemingly nearby, I feel like they can't help but get involved too. Which is a bit interesting, seeing as how Sylvia is sort of an erstwhile co-worker of the two of them. Alright, so this is the secret rune here. Oh no, okay. Now there's Japanese on the back, I guess, which Cosmo can read. So, oh, okay, once again it's this guy, who always seems to be causing problems. Yeah, I mean, this is the guy that built the destroyer and caused a bunch of other issues, and, yeah, this was a guy who came from another world once again. So, So, did he create the Crimson Demons? It's his fault? Oh dear. Okay, so I guess it seems like, oh dear. I don't blame Cosma for not wanting Megumin to hear this. Man, like that's pretty bleak for them to hear, you know. Man, so it really seems like the Crimson Demons are sort of the impetus behind all this, you know? Oh, wait a minute. That's the gun then, isn't it? You know, that's why we were showing that earlier. It's a little hint, so it's called a railgun, and despite being like a normal rifle, it's highly powerful. So that's the big countermeasure for the mage killer, which I guess really is that snake thing. And I guess seeing as what's happened with that little inscription, you know, the Crimson Demons have sort of known since antiquity about this thing and all the interesting stuff it can do. So I guess, unfortunately, if they know what the secret countermeasure is, they're going to have to venture into the village, into the fire, and into the army of demons in order to get it and use it, right? And you know, surely such a thing would fall to Cosma, right? Because he's the luckiest, and surely he totally wouldn't miss the shot, right? I don't know. I think things are going to go sideways in pretty short order. Because on the one hand, I guess you do have all these Crimson Demons to hold them off and fight, but, you know, even if the Mage Killer isn't, like, exactly as they say it is, you know, it is their sort of natural enemy, and therefore it's probably kind of effective against them, so, you know, I don't know how long, like, the baker and the fisherman and all the other villagers, I don't know what they can really do to hold off Sylvia. I mean, they seem to be fairly effective against the army of lackeys, if nothing else, but, you know, that's kind of to be expected. So I guess despite their best efforts, Sylvia has protected her army, so, you know, things are gonna get really difficult in short order. You know, in retrospect, maybe it was a little short-sighted of the Crimson Demons to watch over this thing and, you know, sort of keep it around. Maybe they should have destroyed it. I mean, if Sylvia is now capable of casting dispelling magic on such a scale, you know, that's not good. And she's probably sort of prevented them from using magic. Which, I guess when you get down to it, that's sort of like their inherent identity. Without their magic, they're just kinda, you know, pretentious people. And you know, the goblins have the right idea here. Without their magic, they're just a bunch of losers, and therefore we can sort of slaughter them at our own pace. You know, it's never a good thing when, after the village being caught in the Dispel ritual, that, like, the only competent people you have left are Cosma and his party. Because, you know, notably, they were not caught up in the blast. But even so, like, I feel like Megumin's gonna have to kick off a pretty big explosion to do anything. Although I guess not everyone was caught up in the Dispel magic. You know, there's still some people capable of casting and therefore fighting back. And you know, maybe this is the way to do it, like kick off a rock slide or something rather than use magic directly on the mage killer. You know, this might be Union's time to shine and actually do something, you know. Like, I don't think anyone's gonna thank her for it, and she probably won't succeed in the end, but at the very least, causing a rock slide was pretty nifty. You know, I guess it would be nice if she could sort of manage to hold off Sylvia at least a little bit. Wow. All it takes is one proper introduction and everyone starts cheering for Union. I guess that's really all it takes sometimes. Because it seemed like everyone changed their tune pretty quickly. Like, yeah, no, that's my daughter. I love her. That's my student. I taught her everything she knows. Unfortunately, however, I do think Union has her work cut out for her. I don't think she's going to win out in the long run here. Although she at least has the good sense to try and lead the mage killer into a trap. At the very least sort of away from the village. Man. It's like, oh man, I thought it was just a clothesline. Huh, guess not. Oh dear. I can't help but wonder if maybe being used as a clothesline has sort of damaged it. And, man, between a lack of maintenance and darkness probably hitting it, I feel like, that's not good, right? So unfortunately, without this big railgun, I guess it now falls to Megaman to be the big hero. And I feel like, as potent as her explosions are, it probably isn't going to have the desired effect on Sylvia. Oh man, everyone's saying, like, stop using that joke magic, you're old enough to know better. I mean, explosion isn't a joke, it does cause serious harm, but, if you can only use it once, like, that's the real joke. Ooh. Well, that's very interesting indeed. The explosion is charging up the railgun. So, on the one hand, that's nifty. Like, the railgun's probably good to go here. But on the other hand, I somehow don't think Megaman's going to take kindly to Kazuma stealing her thunder. So the gun essentially fires off the spell explosion. Man, I feel like Kazuma should at least let Megaman pull the trigger. Deeply unfortunate. You hit Sylvia square on, but I feel like that probably wasn't the kill shot, Or maybe it was, it's hard to say. It seemed a little anticlimactic. So Kameka's getting a little ahead of herself here. And I can't help but notice that the barrel of the railgun was destroyed, which probably doesn't bode well if Sylvia survived, I mean, it seems like she didn't, but to have fired one shot of the weapon and then it's toast, like, that's not good, It's probably never a good thing if you see your former comrades and they're asking you to join them, I mean, I guess there's got to be something somewhat appealing about it, like, hey, come and hang out with us like we always used to, but, if that means death, then, yeah, I don't know. Wow, so that makes like 5 generals out of commission now? That's a pretty healthy bounty that they've reaped. Yeah, alright, Kazuma's got the right idea. Like, Aqua, shut up. You keep saying stuff that's gonna cause problems. And it seems like this is in fact a problem. Oh dear. So Sylvia seems to have subsumed the former generals. Maybe not subsumed them, but taken on aspects of them seemingly from memory. Like, that's no good. And I do recall that there were considerable issues fighting that second general, the Slime. Yeah, it seems like unfortunately they might have unleashed like a bigger threat to the village. It might have been better if they just aimed for the head, because I feel like had they done that, there would be no way for this to occur. I guess, unfortunately, you kind of live and learn, you know? Like, it's easier to aim for the center of mass, even if that is sort of less sure to kill instantly. Yeah, so unfortunately, it seems like Sylvia's back and better than ever. Or rather, more dangerous. So the question is, how do they get out of this? Because I feel like, having taken on aspects of the other generals, she's probably more demonic, or increasingly demonic. At least Wiz is here to help a little bit, but I'm wondering if this is now maybe time for Aqua to start using divine magic. So I guess Varnir's acting out of rational self-interest here. You know, it wouldn't do to have Kazuma die here, so, you know, it sort of bears intervening. Although it seems like that little mind reading here that Varnir's displaying, that's just sort of common sense. It's like, look, you don't want to die, and understandably so. So this is interesting. You know, I don't think any of the other Demon King's generals have sort of seen these traitors here and, you know, interacted with them to any capacity. So it's interesting that it's happening now, and I feel like, understandably, Sylvia's none too happy about this. It is, of course, rather telling that Aqua's biggest concern is the possibility of having to live in the stables again, and how, like, she's just not going to allow that. But, you know, I feel like maybe, just maybe, you should consider fighting the large monster first and surviving, before considering your own living conditions. Alright, so this is kind of an interesting interaction here. You know, Wiz was never a frontline general for the Demon King. She was in charge of maintaining a barrier. So, I guess it is understandable that there would be some hard feelings between her and Sylvia. You know, it's like, hey Sylvia, why'd you turn yourself into a monster? Well, I didn't have much choice being on the front lines all the time. You have to do what you have to do. Although, unfortunately, it does seem as though Sylvia's kind of impervious to magic at this point. So, Cosmos seems to have latched onto something that there's got to be a weakness here somewhere, and, you know, he kind of knows what that might be. I'm wondering if this involves self-sacrifice. You know, this is frequently the case where Cosmo dies fighting these creatures, but I'm wondering if he understands what's going to have to be done here. You know, I get the feeling he's going to have to serve as a distraction of sorts. So, as much as Sylvia's determined to kill Wiz, I don't know if she could actually do it. Wiz being a lich is sort of hard to kill, you know? Like, I feel like only really Aqua could manage to affect something like that. And it is rather nice that darkness is now being effective. Because, you know, sure, she's not doing any real damage, but she never would have done any anyways. So that she's merely serving as a distraction is probably the best thing she can hope for. Oh. Okay, so Varnir is sort of taking control of darkness and puppeteering her and being more effective that way. I guess that makes a lot more sense than darkness suddenly just becoming competent. So this is an interesting situation. Megumin and Yunyun seemingly intend to die by virtue of not being able to teleport out, but what are the villagers going to do about it? They don't really have any magic at their disposal currently. I guess I was kind of hoping they would do something, and maybe they still will, but Kazuma seems to have his own plan here. That Aqua would claim he never runs out of crazy ideas, that really informs my assumption that Kazuma's planned something insane. And then he's praising Aqua. I don't know, that doesn't bode well. I feel like he's probably going to do something very foolhardy indeed. So it seems like everyone's sort of conducting their own plans in parallel. Wiz is drawing magic from all the villagers, presumably for one big final attack. Kazuma's planning something, and he's stacking all sorts of divine blessings, presumably to bolster his luck. Varnir's stalling for time, using darkness as a vehicle. I'm wondering if this is all gonna just sort of come together and work here, because I feel like Kazuma's plan is probably going to be the one that tells in the end, but at the same time, Wiz sort of gathering all the magic, that seems to be on paper the one that has the best chance of succeeding. Just an overwhelming blast of magic to destroy this evil creature. So I guess, in her own way, Sylvia's having a rough go of things. Relationships but no love or romance, and the only people who notice her are goblins. I guess it's understandable that life kind of loses its luster without love, but at the same time, I don't know, I feel like Kazuma can speak to that a little bit. Oh no, surely Kazuma's not going to fall on that particular sword. Oh dear indeed. I guess he's sort of taking advantage of his newfound popularity to really distract Sylvia and just, take her mind off of fighting. Oh, Kazuma, no. Oh dear, to strip down like this, that's bad, Because I feel like once you get subsumed into a form like this, it's over. We're gonna get, another little tick mark of psychological trauma for Kazuma. I can't help but wonder if all those blessings Aqua laid upon him was just to... Oh, no. I was gonna say it makes him a good liar, but I think, his integration into Sylvia is instead imparting a weakness. Because if he's, blessing her, he's sort of, brought in this holy element to her, which... her physiology is probably ill-equipped to handle. And I guess he's also makes for a good target for Wiz. Well, I guess if Wiz is passing along the power to Megumin and Yunyun, then, there's only one thing to do left, right? It's obviously just to make a big explosion. Ah, man, I think Yunyun's telling a horrible fib that Kazuma has faith in Megumin's explosion magic. I mean, he has faith that it'll blow things up, but, man, I don't think he has any faith that he's gonna get out of this unscathed. I feel like Kazuma really is going to die, right? They are just going to have to bring him back to life, and he's probably going to get chastised once again. Eris is none too keen about him dying and having to be reincarnated. Or not reincarnated, brought back to life. Slight difference there. But I guess with Aqua around, it's not really something you have to worry about over much. I guess the question is, with Kazuma so heavily integrated into Sylvia, surely Megumin wouldn't pull her punch, right? It's interesting that the power of love here is essentially working on Sylvia's side, but I can't help but get the idea that Kazuma's probably going to undermine her at the last moment. Oh, surely. Oh, no. Okay, so Kazuma's saying, hey, let's die together. Fair enough, I guess. Kazuma can get away with saying that knowing he will come back. Even if he gets... Jeez. Even if he gets horribly impaled by the spell in the process. It's all going to plan, but boy, I bet he wasn't betting on that. I was hoping for some masterstroke of a plan here, but no, I guess not. The plan was really just, get killed. Oh dear. So I feel like, bringing Kazuma back from this, there might be a little bit of fanfare, but I feel like, nothing he did was all that extraordinary. He really just sort of got killed. Oh dear. It's never a good thing when the goddess sent to preside over your death, vomits at the sight of your remains. Oh boy. But it is interesting that there is this idea that he might have been blasted so thoroughly that nothing could be done. And I guess it is a good thing that he managed to avoid such a fate. And I guess, now everyone likes him again, which is kind of interesting because it seemed like everyone didn't really like him all that much. For totally fair reasons, but, okay, he saved a far-off village, killed another demon general, and that's it then, everyone's fine with him again. It is rather fickle, Although I guess... maybe the icing on the cake here is that Megumin learns a lesson here. If she knew advanced magic, things might have worked out better. But, things already just sort of worked out as it is anyways, so... could be worse, but I guess the idea that Megumin's even considering learning other forms of magic for someone, then... I guess that's something. That's real development there. Character growth, as it were. Oh, okay, this is a trap. Megumin says, alright, seal away my explosion magic. I'll only use advanced magic from now on. Come on. There's no way this is actually gonna happen, right? I mean, some of this is motivated by jealousy, she can't let Union be better than her, she has to wield magic the same as Union, but better, because she is better. But at the same time, getting rid of explosion magic is sort of like getting rid of sort of this core part of her identity, it can't be done, She didn't even look at the card. I feel like Cosmo just, didn't do what she asked him to do, And I guess he's doing the right thing here. It's like, hey, you wanna do the daily explosion? We haven't done it today. I mean, I guess this is probably as good a way to call forth the deception here that he didn't actually seal it away. Megman's under the impression this will be the last one, but it's pretty clear that that's not going to be the case. Oh boy, so that's a considerably bigger explosion than normal. I'm wondering what Cosmo did. What he actually did, I guess it is also fitting that, the episode started with an explosion, and now it's ending with one. And I feel like he probably has to give it a fair few points, too, on his rating system. It's interesting that she does have to declare that one day she will master explosion magic, as if she isn't, really the foremost expert. There is something nice about the routine of blowing things up and carrying Mega Man back. I know that was something that was really kind of drilled into us in the first season, what with whole episodes being dedicated to that, but I guess there is something to be said for the routine. Oh, that's very telling, smoke cloud in the shape of a heart and all that. I wonder what that could possibly mean. Alright, that was a pretty good movie, all things considered. I do like it, Although that said, having watched season 3 already, I have to say I think that is the best season so far. Even better than this, I guess I was sort of spoiled by knowing how everything would work out roughly, but even in spite of that, I think this was a good, worthwhile watch. Now, listening to these credits, I can't help but think about all the ending themes of Konosuba. I've always liked them. I can't say I remember the one from the most recent season off the top of my head, but the first two, those are songs I just generally tend to listen to. They're very nice and comforting. This one isn't in exactly the same style, but I'm pretty sure it's, the voice actresses for Mega Man Darkness and Aqua singing. That's what they had done in the first two seasons. I think that's the case with this song, too. I don't blame them for having a few songs as the credits roll, what with films having a fair bit more in the way of production staff. Alright, well that's it for this episode. If you've enjoyed it, then by all means, tune in for the next one. See you, Space Cowboy.